Alrighty, everybody, we are back for episode 2 of the Fantasy Consultant. So, as always, I'm the Wolf, and we're here to help you learn as Shamus learns from our information-packed sessions. So this is going to be a great live session. We're going to have 3 takeaways from the draft of Shamus's baseline assessment from last week. We're going to review that in more detail. I promised him I wouldn't go into any information while he was doing his draft last week, so I wanted to see exactly what you know and what your thoughts are. But I've had some time to look at it and dig in, and we have some key takeaways that hopefully all of you guys can learn from as well. But first, Shamus, how are you doing?
Doing well.
How's your week been? What have you been up to lately?
The week has been good. I've been dancing up a storm all day, every day, as I said last time. We have a competition approaching in a few weeks.
Awesome.
So I'm dancing with 19 different women at our upcoming competition.
Jealous.
So
Sounds pretty awesome.
I know. It takes talent to dance with 19 at once.
Yeah, I'll need your instructions so maybe I can join this 19-woman fest next time. That sounds fantastic. But again, this is episode 2, so we're thrilled to welcome you back. Again, with 3 key takeaways from the draft of last time. We want to make sure you guys are engaged in sending us any questions you have, any comments, any feedback. We got some really good interaction last time. We want to increase that even more. A lot of Packers fans kind of came out of nowhere. I'm sure you had nothing to do with that, right?
Nothing.
They came out and commented, which was awesome to see that type of interaction. But we want more of that. So submit your questions. You know, I've got a little bit of a mailbag going, but we want even more of that. But yeah, I want to just dive right in as the audience is building and just pump real quick. We have a draft guide that just came out, the Fantasy Market Report. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that at all.
I have. I've glanced at it. Very useful.
It's
very useful.
Jam-packed. And we've gotten some great reviews on it so far.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said, jam-packed with information, but still skimmable, which is what we're going for, easily readable. We've gotten, lots of feedback from Jay and Beverly said that. We also got a guy who said, from Will, who's one of Nat's buddies, said it's information packed. This guy really knows his stuff. Doesn't value QBs very much though, which Shamus is going to be learning very much today. How low I value QBs after he took Aaron Rodgers in the second last time. So we appreciate those kind words. We want more and more people to check out that draft guide. It is 100% free. All you gotta do is provide your email. We'll send it right to your inbox, and it's jam-packed, bargains, overprices, all this stuff. We spent a ton of time on it. We think it's great information. We want more and more people to see it. So wanted to plug that as the audience was growing. We've got a good amount of viewers in now, so we're going to dive into it. So I'm checking my agenda here for the different takeaways I have. But last week we used this tool. It's called Draft Wizard, as you remember. So you're on the iPad and pressing the buttons, figured it out.
Yeah.
Where it simulates the mock drafts. It's a great tool for anybody who hasn't used it. You can fly through mock drafts, get that practice quick. You can go backwards if you want to see, what if I made this pick instead of that one.
Yeah.
Really useful, much better than your standard mock drafts. Obviously, the human element is nice in some ways, but it can really take up time. So that tool is very useful. We have Shamus's team right here. I have pulled up the screenshot of it. So as a reminder of his draft, we went, or I shouldn't say we, because I did not support many of these picks, but I just let him go. Devonta Freeman, first overall. Aaron Rodgers, second. He was drafting from the 9 spot as well, just so everyone knows. So Devonta Freeman at 9, Rodgers on that second, Demaryius Thomas third, Montgomery, Brandon Marshall, Eric Ebron, I'm going to talk about that, Mark Ingram, Randall Cobb, Jordan Matthews, Matt Forte, 2 horrible picks in a row, which we'll discuss, Seattle Seahawks, Ted Ginn, Austin Hooper, Giovanni Bernard, Tyler Lockett, and then wrapped up with Matt Bryant as his kicker. So that's the squad. And rather than just go pick by pick, I again came up with 3 takeaways that I think everybody can learn from fantasy-wise. Just draft strategies. I know you're interested, Shamus, in learning more about, in your application, you said the late rounds and the bench. But I think there's some strategies and big takeaways we can have from even the early rounds here to build upon that everyone can learn from. I think that whole bench and the building the upside and stuff, we could save until next week. It's a whole episode in itself. We can Also, you have the draft guide, the penny
Right.
stock section
Right.
has 20 names that I love in the late rounds. So we'll get to those. I don't want to put off what you really want to learn about, but at the same time, there's three big takeaways I think everyone needs to know, especially you, based on the draft. So do you want to dig into these now?
I'm ready. Bring it.
All right.
Bring it on.
So Aaron Rodgers at QB, number 2, your second overall pick. Can't do it. I'm sorry. I know you love Rodgers. He's your guy.
I know.
There's this balance of, having the guys you love and want, and I totally understand that. You want the players you want, and I know you're kind of heartbroken when you saw Rodgers go in the third before we picked him. We went back so you could have him,
Right.
and I didn't want you to miss on your guys. I still, as good as he is, as safe as he is, and I love that about him, the QB depth is unbelievable. So I wrote down some of the QBs and different things that went a little bit later. You took Rodgers in round 2. Brady went in round 4. He's my number 1 guy, so he went two full rounds later.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, round 7. Big Ben and Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, my QB 7. I love him. Round 13. Phillip Rivers, 14. My QB 11. That's a very good starter, Phillip Rivers, in round 14. That means there's 3 things to consider. There's supply, demand, and opportunity cost. So I know that's like economics, but that's our whole thing at Roto Street Journal is the stock market of fantasy and all that. And so, you look at the supply and demand, and I know you wrote an article about this too. This is one of your takeaways, but I sensed a little hesitancy in that article too. But I don't want Rodgers to go. I'm trying to convince you full on. You gotta let go and understand how the draft is gonna work. All those names going so late, you think of supply and demand. There's so many, and the demand is also so low because you only start one of them. Yeah, you can have one on your bench and whatnot, but you only start one. And so with such a high supply, guys going all the way in 14, maybe 15, 16 guys you can start at QB and feel comfortable with, that comes in now with the opportunity cost of when you spend a second round pick and there's so much supply late,
Right.
the talent of receivers and running backs going in round 2 or Gronk is just so much higher than the guys you could find in 14 where Phillip Rivers went. So when you think about, okay, who's going to score more? Rodgers and the running back I get in round 14, maybe you hit, fire in a barrel, but they're so rare to hit those lottery tickets. It's almost a guarantee that Phillip Rivers is going to get you his points in round 14. Late round quarterbacks, tend to still get you their points. Not Rodgers level, but it's a guaranteed point source late, which is not the case with receivers and running backs. Does that kind of make sense? Do you get what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, most certainly. As I was reading, I think I mentioned it in my article about how, there are so many great quarterbacks and you're going to get points from them.
Right.
But there are running backs and wide receivers that are going to be inconsistent with their points that they're giving you. So it certainly makes sense that you want to try to score those key players.
Right.
As you just mentioned, Gronk. Earlier on, rather than taking a quarterback.
The bigger guarantees
right,
from those.
Exactly.
The other thing to consider with those positions too is you start 3 receivers in your league, 2 running backs. So we talk about
and
supply and demand, and a flex too. Those positions you have to start so many more.
Right.
So the supply goes down faster. The quality also drops off so much faster at those positions too, which is why I think it's absolutely paramount to get a good receiver and running back. Stable early. I always tend to go, unless I get Gronk, I tend to go running back receiver with, all of my first 6, 7 picks, and I don't even consider it, maybe 8 or 9, depending on how many quarterbacks are falling. I just load up on as many as I can. We're going to talk about depth and talent in a second. But, again, supply and demand and an opportunity cost. When you think of those 3 things, it sounds like you kind of get it. I don't want you to miss out on the guy you love, but you told me you might be picking at 12 this year? Or that's the last pick of the first round?
Possibly.
So if that's the case, you can't go Aaron Rodgers in the second round. There's going to be too many good running backs, receivers. Get your boy Jordy Nelson. I think he's a fantastic option toward the tail end of the draft. Finished the season as he was the number 1 fantasy receiver last year. He's being drafted as like the wide receiver 6 or so. Right. He outpaced the second half of the year once he fully recovered. I think I gave you guys the stat last week. Over 50 points above Antonio Brown, Odell. Over the second half of the year. So he finished on a flurry of points. I think it's going to continue next year and maybe for the whole entire year. So that's a guy, if you want your Packers, Jordy Nelson at the end of round 1 would be a fantastic guy to get your Packers. Maybe Rodgers falls all the way to round 3. Then you can consider it the end of round 3. It's your guy, you love him. You've gotten yourself a good receiver, running back, hopefully at those first 2 picks. Then maybe you can go Rodgers if you truly love him and need him. Sure. Okay. CJ texted us. I just been making sure everyone can hear us and whatnot. Getting some questions in and stuff, which is great. But yes, so lock up a running back receiver with those first 2 picks, build those skill positions, and then take Rodgers if he's there in the 3rd, or if not, if your guy's gone, wait till round 10.
Who would you suggest taking the 2nd?
So let's say you go Jordy Nelson. Yeah. He's your guy round 1. You want to get your Packer. I would say you got to hope one of the running backs falls. Mm-hmm. Those tiers. Right. And actually, let's transition into the second point, which is the importance of tiers. And I think in those first 2 picks, you really want to aim to get a tier 1 running back and tier 1 receiver. And do you know what I mean when I say tiers? Or not?
Sort of like, well, if we're ready to, the Dancing with the Stars, we did a little bit of the tiers with Dancing with the Stars.
That's right.
Sort of skill set, where they're going to fall,
exactly.
their point potential. They're the VIPs.
Absolutely.
They're the ones you want. Tier 1 you want, tier 4, forget them.
Right, exactly. So, like you just said, the tiers are groups of skill sets, talents of similar levels.
Right.
So when I say, a tier 1 running back, that means all the guys that I consider running back ones, the workhorses that get receptions and carries and all that stuff,
right.
all facets of the game. That's what I consider a tier 1 running back. Mm-hmm. And if you can, especially if you're at the end of the draft, there's going to be tier 1 running backs and receivers still there. I really like getting one of each. You want that bona fide wide receiver 1, that bona fide running back 1. Mm-hmm. I'd really recommend going that. So who I consider tier 1 running backs this year, I would say, that you're going to be looking at. Obviously, there's Zeke, there's, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell. They're not going to fall to you. They should be the top 3 picks of every draft. They're not going to be there. But then this next group, you got to hope one of these 4 fall. I think they're clear RB1s, just a slight step below those guys. LaShawn McCoy, Melvin Gordon, Jay Ajayi. I love those 3. I consider them just a half tier above than Devonta Freeman and DeMarco Murray. Mm-hmm. But those 7 guys, hopefully one of them's there for you at 12. And there should be, because there's a big 4 or 5 group of receiver that always go. So I would say any of those, LaShawn McCoy, Melvin Gordon, or Jay Ajayi, if any of those 3 are there, I like those more than DeMarco or Freeman. But if Devonta Freeman or DeMarco are there, and I know you like Devonta Freeman. You took him first year.
He's done well for me.
He's historically consistent. He's a high floor player, a higher floor than Ajayi, since he's done it before and we know what to expect from him. So I can see if you want Freeman over Ajayi. I personally love Ajayi. I think he's got huge upside. But I would go, Jordy if that's your guy and he falls to you. And then one of those running backs. If Jordy isn't there, if someone takes him to spite you because you won last year and they're coming for you now, still try to aim to get maybe A.J. Green or Mike Thomas or one of those top 7 receivers, because at 12, you're going to get a top 7 running back and a top 7 receiver. It's mathematically, you got it. There's 14 people that you can go from. I think it's a great way to start your draft. And then if Rodgers is there in round 3, okay, then we can consider Rodgers because you love him. I personally wouldn't go him there, but at 36 overall, because he's coming all the way back at the end of round 3, you can justify it. So definitely running back, receiver. I want to keep talking about tiers, though, and the importance. My points 2 and 3 kind of merge here. My second point was always side with talent over need, but the ideal is if both match, okay? So what I mean by that is these tiers of people I'm talking about. Let's say you're in round 5. I'm going to use your example here. You took Eric Ebron round 6 because you looked at him and you said, I need a tight end, and this is the top guy on the board. It's round 6. That was a horrible move. I'm not going to lie. Don't ever just draft someone because you don't have that position. Eric Ebron, for example, I put him in this tier of low-end tight end ones. Could you start him? Sure. Mm-hmm. When you looked at the board, you've also gotten that tier. Hunter Henry, Jack Doyle, Martellus Bennett, Delaney Walker, all guys I like more than Eric Ebron, first of all. But also, you could have seen, there's 7 or 8 tight ends still in this tier who I personally value more, but whether you love Ebron or not, that means there's a good chance 2-3 rounds later, there's still going to be a tight end sitting there. And whereas running backs, let's consider this tier of maybe now we've gotten through that elite tier, we're in round 5, so maybe we're down to RB2s. But again, you want to build huge depth at RB. They always get hurt, they always get injured. Right. And I look on the board where you took Ebron, we have Danny Woodhead, Amir Abdullah, Tevin Coleman, a couple rounds later even than Eric Ebron. You took Mark Ingram actually next, which I think is great value. I like that a lot. But Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin going in round 8, whereas you took Ebron in round 6. That's, again, just an example. Like, if I was looking at my tiers, and I value running backs higher because of the supply-demand again. If you follow, I know I'm spitting a lot. I just
No, I'm
pause
with you.
if
I'm following.
If I'm not. Since I value those RBs because it's a less depth position, the supply is low for a demand of 2 spots. I want to make sure I lock in as many of those RB2s as I can before they all run out. So this tier was filled with a bunch of RB2s still there, but you decide I don't have a tight end, I need to get it. I don't agree with that. You got to make sure you're loading up for depth at that running back and receiver positions, those quality tiers. If they're still there, if quality RB2s or wide receiver 2s are there, I don't care that you don't have a tight end or maybe a quarterback because you're going late now. You got to just load up on that depth of those quality
So would you
tiers.
say drafting a tight end would come more towards the end? What round would you say for that?
I think it's a fantastic question, Shamus.
Okay.
So that depends, again, when you look at the tiers.
Right.
Gronk, I have in a tier by himself. He's going to go round 2, maybe 3, and he deserves it because he's that high-end, weekly edge, scored over 5 points more than the closest tight end last week on a week-to-week basis. So he's just a monster. And that tier, when I'm using my tiers, he slides right into, round 3. This is why I also love using a big board rather than just position ranks. Because you can kind of see how all the tiers merge together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Gronk in a tier of his own, no, I'm not waiting for him because you can't. Jordan Reed is also in, the next tier down.
Yeah.
Huge upside, a weekly edge. Same with Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to get a weekly edge at tight end, and I totally love that philosophy, looking at round 4, Jordan Reed's falling, Travis Kelce's falling to round 4 as well. Totally can see you going that because if you look at the tiers, they're right in tier 1.5. I have them as weekly edges.
Right.
But if you miss out on those guys, then the next tier is Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Tyler Eifert. Still above the pack, still above the Eric Ebrons or the guys that are falling to late, and you can depend on those guys when they're on the field. So I like those guys around 6 or 7 or so. But let's say you miss on those guys because again you're stocking up on receivers, running backs. Then you just wait. You wait till around 10, 11, similar to the quarterback. Okay. Guys like Jack Doyle and your guy Eric Ebron usually falls around 10. You took him in 6 here again. Maybe you want to throw up a little bit, but it's okay. Martellus Bennett going around 8. I personally love Hunter Henry, goes around 8, 9. So I would say, most drafts I'm waiting taking Hunter Henry in round 9. I love him. San Diego Chargers caught 8 touchdowns last year as a rookie in the position that's the hardest to translate as a rookie. I really love him personally, but I think, to summarize all that again, you use the tiers to see, do I want the weekly edge? I go Gronk in the second round. Do I want the pretty consistent weekly edge? You go Jordan Reed, Travis Kelce round 4. Do I want just dependable production that I can count on? Jimmy Graham round 6, Greg Olsen round 6, or I wait and I get one of those guys around 9, 10. I don't just look and say, oh, I don't have a tight end, because when you drafted, if we look at the draft here, you'll notice those names are Gronk went round 2, Kelce, Jordan Reed, the end of round 3. Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Eifert, that's third tier.
Right.
And then we see this whole tier, this whole group, Rudolph, Ebron, 6, a reach for both of those guys, because then you see Delaney Walker, Jack Doyle, Bennett, Henry, Ertz, all similar levels of talent, going, 2 rounds later. Opportunity cost, again, that means you couldn't draft guys who I love, like, Danny Woodhead again. You took over Eric Ebron. You took Eric Ebron over Danny Woodhead. I love Danny Woodhead, especially now the news that Kenneth Dixon's out. Definitely don't want to be doing that. Receivers going late. We see Jamison Crowder. We see Willie Snead. Again, this opportunity cost. So that's kind of how I summarize tight end. And just again, that's a great question to illuminate kind of tiers again.
Right.
But the main point with all this again is. Did somebody say they can't hear too well?
Someone can't hear well, and Pete has a question.
Yeah, so we'll save that. I'm not worried about you for Gronk. Well, we're talking about tight ends, so we might as well join that. Dave, if you can hear us better, let us know. We'll try to project a little bit louder. Sorry about that. But Gronk's durability, of course you got to be worried. He's missed so much time in the last couple of years, Pete. That being said, if you get 12, 13 games out of him, you're scoring more than everybody's tight end that week. He's the best touchdown scorer in all of football from the receiving standpoint. So it's worth that risk for me. If, there's a certain drop-off, like I was talking with Shamus earlier, there's 7 receivers, 7 running backs. And after that, if you're willing to stomach that risk of Gronk, I think it's worth it. Even though there is good depth at the tight end position like me and Shamus were just talking about, yes, you got to be worried about his durability, but right now he's fully healthy. He's moving around camp well by all reports. So, yes, of course, a guy, again, that injury prone with that much history, you got to be worried about like 4 back surgeries.
Yeah.
But when he's on the field, it's just
his arm.
It's
Did he break his arm or something? Or
He's
his
had
elbow.
he's a robot at this point.
But everything is broken.
It's everything. So yes,
it's like a nightmare.
It's so true, and you are definitely worried about his durability. You have to be, but it's a risk worth taking. As long as, like I was just saying, Hunter Henry round 8. Buy yourself some insurance for Gronk. Take Hunter Henry round 8. Take Jack Doyle round 10. Make sure you have a good backup plan. Take Dwayne Allen in the last round so you have Gronk's handcuff. Yes, I'm worried about his durability. I still want to draft him because of how much upside he brings. But again, our main point there was draft talent over need, especially at the running back and receiver position. Just because you don't have a tight end, if that tier is just all guys that are going to keep falling to around 8, 9, 10, then keep stocking up the running backs. Danny Wood had a clear RB2 there. Amir Abdullah, a clear RB2. Coleman. Those guys would have made more sense to balance out. You have Freeman and Montgomery, 2 pretty good starters. One of them goes down, you have another guy on your bench ready, or your flex. So that's the big takeaway. Stock up on talent over need. If there's a guy, if you can meet both, if you need a wide receiver 3 and the talent's there that you love, then it's the perfect pick. But if it's, you need a tight end, but there's way just more top talented receivers, running backs, you got to side with them. So that was the key takeaway. That and tiers. So we've covered really all 3, the supply demand, especially at the quarterback position, and what it also means for running backs and receivers. Right. We've covered the tiers and grouping people and using that to form a big board and kind of sticking to that big board and drafting the talent over the need as you go down the list, and ideally matching both. But if you can't match both and there's just too much talent above a need, side with the talent every time, okay? So, what do you think of all this? I know I just spit a lot at you. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. No, yeah. I mean, I definitely, it makes sense. I mean, when you think of it logically and point-wise, you are running backs, wide receivers. That is your points that you're getting on your team. You need to stock up on those key players before you're getting a tight end or you're getting a quarterback where that's one position where the majority of your positions are wide receivers, running backs, you have the flex and those kinds of things. So it makes sense to get those people before you're getting the others. I think that also, like you were saying about Gronk and certain players, there are those tier 1 tight ends or those people that are going to go in a little earlier rounds. And if they're there in a 3rd round or so forth, then, it can be considered or so forth.
Absolutely.
But it definitely makes sense. It definitely makes logical sense.
That's a great wrap-up of just, again, the supply-demand. When you start 3 running backs, or 3 receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, the demand is much higher.
Right.
But at the same time, you still can consider when you look at those tiers, okay, I know Gronk's this tier above everybody else, so even with this demand in mind, I got to make the plunge. Or with you, Rodgers is a tier above all these QBs, so even though I know all the supply and demand, for me it makes sense to invest in them at this time.
Right.
So yes, there are players that transcend that supply and demand philosophy because they're so good and consistent and safe. Right. Gronk, Rodgers, Brady, these guys that we know. But still, it seems like you got those takeaways completely down, which is awesome. And those were the 3 biggest lessons that I kind of wanted to take away. A few more just like little nitpicky things about the draft that I wanted to make sure I cover. You went Devonta Freeman over Mike Evans, and if you love Freeman and that's your guy, so be it. But Mike Evans is just a guy I really want to talk about quick. I personally have him over Odell Beckham. I just think he's an absolute monster. A lot of people are a little worried that Deshaun Jackson's going to take a lot of looks. He will take some targets, and that's fine. But what I love about Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson there now is safeties have to account for Deshaun Jackson. He's so fast. He's such a burner that's going to take some attention away. So even if he takes, 50 of those targets that Mike Evans just loaded up on last year, the quality of the targets he's going to be getting is going to go up. And so when that's in mind, he's not getting triple teamed anymore because he has Deshaun Jackson there. And, they can now sling the ball deeper. They have the weapons to execute this 4 vertical seam, Dirk Cutter calls it, where he loves to just stretch the defense. They now have the weapons in place to do that, and I think it's only going to help Mike Evans to have them in the red zone more. Right. He's one of the biggest red zone beasts in the entire league. No one's really as good as him other than maybe A.J. Green at the jump ball in the end zone. So I love Mike Evans. I think if he falls to you wherever you end up drafting, if you're at 9 again and Mike Evans is there, he transcends. We're talking about tiers. There's this tier of receivers, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, and who else? I'm forgetting Julio Jones and Mike Evans. That tier, those 4 guys, after the big 3 running back tier, I feel like those 4 guys have to go. Whatever way you organize them, I know you're a big Julio Jones fan. You took him at 3 in our mock draft. Not the best pick over Ezekiel Elliott, unless maybe Zeke gets suspended now, and now it's not as bad.
I got a B+. I just on the record.
B+ from then, a C range from me. I'm a little bit harder graded than Fantasy Pros, though, I guess. But that's how example of tiers, big 3 running backs tier that you have to take as your top 3, then the big 4 receivers, a group that you have to take as your next 4. Then, those guys are probably going to all be gone, though, if you're taking at the end of the draft. That's where you're looking at your Jordy Nelsons and one of those, 4 or 5 running back tiers of RB1s that I was looking at earlier. So I think tiers, too, as you look at my rankings, you'll notice every single one's in tiers. Right. It might even make more sense after you do this talk. You'll see, this is what he was talking about. This is the tier of RB1s. This is the tier of middling RB2s. You'll see it and understand that hopefully a little bit more. It's really important. But now we got some questions coming in, so we can turn to the mailbag. Some fancy questions. Then I'd love to just kind of chat about how the business is going. Simply Shamus, the wedding planning parties, all that stuff. Any bachelorette party stories. Love to jump into that. I know you said you've seen some good movies lately, so maybe we can get some movie reviews on that. But we do have a couple questions on it. So, are you all in on DeAndre Hopkins again now that Osweiler is out of town, or are you shying away? Says Nat Jones.
I've got nothing to say.
You got nothing on that one? So, personally, and we actually
I can get on Google.
Yep. So, personally, I'd actually answered this yesterday. We did a lunch break blitz mailbag, and somebody was asking, what do I look at I have the first overall pick. Who am I looking at on that second, third round at the turn at those picks? And DeAndre Hopkins is a guy I definitely recommend there. I am back on the bandwagon now that Osweiler's gone. I think Osweiler's that bad. I know we have an article that's hilarious up there. It's like 20 things that are worse than Brock Osweiler, and they're horrible things. Or no, 20 things that Brock Osweiler is worse than. So these horrible things that Brock Osweiler is worse, and he's an awful QB. He really just crushed DeAndre Hopkins' value last year. And, is Tom Savage or Deshaun Watson going to be an upgrade? I don't see how they couldn't be. I do want to make sure I check in on training camp and see, is the rapport building? Are they connecting on those deep balls? Is this a really good chemistry there? I do want to make sure that's happening, because if I'm seeing reports that Savage is sailing the ball over Hopkins' head every time, then I'll reconsider. But right now I do have Hopkins, I believe at my wide receiver 9, just above Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Demaryius Thomas, those tiers. He's right in that tier. If you like one of those guys better, then certainly I think the floor is higher with a guy like Demaryius Thomas, a guy, who's done it before, has Mike McCoy back. The floor is higher there. I personally value DeAndre Hopkins' ceiling a lot more. 111 catches, 1,500 yards, and 11 TDs just a year ago. He's one of the premier talents in the league. So I'm backing on him as long as they're looking okay in training camps.
I got on Google.
Did you find it?
I got on Google, and I found out an interesting stat about him. He is the tallest quarterback in the NFL, standing at 6'8".
He's a monster, Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
6'8" does not get you the ability to throw the ball to receivers.
No, but that's what Google told me today. So, seems pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Shamus, what is the best movie you've seen this summer from Nat Jones?
Oh, what a great question. The best movie, I've seen it actually twice in the theater, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman
I haven't seen it
was badass.
Really? Okay.
Girl power, all the way, all the way. It was just, the story was great. The action sequences were phenomenal. I loved it. I saw it twice. I just recently, this past weekend, I saw the Planet of the Apes. I didn't think that I would cry during the Planet of the Apes, but I did. Twice. Very emotional with the animals. That was super intense. That was a great movie as well. So okay. I've seen a few, but I'd have to go with the Wonder Woman. I mean, she is a beast.
Okay.
Total beast.
I have not seen, but I'm very interested in that new war movie by Christopher Nolan. I forget what it's called.
Dunkirk.
Okay.
Yep, I've seen that one as
you
well.
Saw that too? Okay.
I've seen that one as well. I like to see the movies. It's good and relaxing.
Yeah.
If you see that one though,
is that good and relaxing? It doesn't
it's
look
not relaxing. You need to bring earplugs. It's the loudest thing you'll ever see. The cinematography is amazing, but it is so loud. It's like a horrific hangover. But it's good. It's a good one.
Speaking of horrific hangovers, have you been on any recent bachelorette parties or any? You always seem to have wild stories.
No, but I am off to P-Town in a few weeks for a bachelorette party, and so about 4 weddings coming up. So there should be some fun wedding do's and don'ts that I can share with the world.
Fantastic. We'll have to make sure we pull those on for the viewers to listen and learn from. So that's all we've got for today. Just to summarize again the key points that we talked about. You gotta, wherever you're drafting for all positions, Shamus and I are hitting a wedding together soon, Chris Jason.
That is actually a true story.
That's fantastic.
Yep, CJ and I. He can't wait. Neither can I, CJ. We'll have to teach you some dance moves before we get there.
He needs the help, trust me. I've seen it. It's awful. But to summarize our key points from today, you got to consider supply and demand and opportunity costs at all points of your draft, especially with QB, given how high the supply is, how low the demand is when you only start one, and the opportunity cost of drafting one early when there's still talent that you can depend on at receiver and running back that historically doesn't exist in the late rounds. You very rarely can hit on a round 12 running back, round 12 receiver, but round 12 quarterbacks often can produce. Phillip Rivers, you know you're going to get production out of him in round 12. Right. So supply, demand, opportunity cost. With that in mind, you then form your tiers of players. So the tier 1 running backs, the elite guys, then you step down running back 1s, step down high-end RB2s, middle RB2s. You have these groupings. Right. You have the same thing with receivers and tight ends, and then you kind of piece them all together in a big board. And you see, okay, Gronk's the tier 1 tight end. He slides in right after the tier 1 running backs and the tier 1 receivers. And you just piece it all together based on these groupings. And when you have these groupings and it all makes sense, you take your draft and you do it by talent, not need. So you go with the guy that's higher up on your big board as a talent. If he meets a need, fantastic. But if it's, I need a tight end, but the next tier doesn't come up for another 15 picks, then don't blow the opportunity cost and blow a spot just to get it. Take those good quality RBs or receivers that are falling. That's just general overall draft strategy that I think your draft really illuminated and I think you can benefit from in the future. Next week, we're going to talk about what I know you're interested in, the late rounds. And, again, as I read, Matt Forte, Jordan Howard, taking a defense in round 11. Ugh, some gross stuff in that. So you definitely need some work on the late rounds. So I thought, I know. But I thought this overall holistic draft approach was useful for everything, all the rounds. And then next week we'll focus on those penny stocks.
Of course.
We'll give you some names. We'll pump up, again, that draft guide with 20 of the penny stocks.
Yes,
make sure you check that out. Pick out some of those names to maximize your bench upside. Again, one last plug for that draft guide. All we ask for is your email. Make sure you check out the website. It is a fantastic resource. Great reviews already. Not just your standard same old ESPN, Yahoo groupthink analysis that gets you the 5th place finish every year. This is, unique takes on the fantasy market, the unique strategies and philosophies and mindsets you need to have, in addition to the player rankings and everything you've come to love, the stock scores, all that. Jam-packed, over 100 pages. It's free. You give us your email, you get a second draft guide in mid-August because we're going to update everything, keep it fresh for you. So when draft time is ready, all we ask is an email, no money, anything, and it's going to be the best thing you can do for your fantasy season 2017.
Very useful.
I'm looking forward to next week. Hopefully these lessons. Shamus has a great write-up that comes out every Monday. We're a little behind the ball this week in publishing it, but every Monday Shamus is going to have that ready for you guys. So we'll see if what I talked about today sticks, and he's got some lessons and takeaways from this.
Yes.
And other than that, we want even more mailbags. We got a couple questions today, which was awesome. Chip, I miss you too. I appreciate that. So we should get some beers or something together soon if you're still in the area. I have no idea where you even are anymore. Definitely miss you too, man. But absolutely, we want more and more questions and mailbags so we can have a solid, 10, 15 minutes at the end where we're answering questions. They can be fantasy football, they can be fashion related if you want Shamus to go, celebrity, whatever it is. We'll have an open book. And then I think next week maybe we'll talk a little more business strategy and stuff too, hear how the Simply Shamus business is going. We can talk about what we're doing at RSJ to grow our business, and different things like that we can hit next week. But we're going to wrap this up because I know Shamus has the cha-cha-cha to go instruct on.
Yes.
But it was a fantastic time.
Fantastic
Appreciate you joining me.
Of course.
As always. And if any of you guys are interested in some consulting as well, just reach out. We're looking to do more and more of these type of sessions and just chat fantasy. There's not enough content out here where people just kind of talk fantasy and learn as other people learn. We'd love to get more examples. But everybody else, thank you guys so much for tuning in, for your comments. This will be live on the Facebook, so if you have more questions, comment them on there. We'll get to them next week, or I can comment on it after this. But, fantastic, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Looking good, Shamus, as that next commenter says. Appreciate your viewership, listenership. Hopefully you learned something. And let us know what else. Let us know what else we can discuss for you guys next week to get you ready for your 2017 season and winning a title this year. All right. See you later, guys.